Dream by William Shakespeare. How now, spirit, whither wander you? Hello, and today's lesson is going to be on A Midsummer Night's Dream. We're going to go on a magical adventure into ancient Greece and into the land of the fairies. Are you ready to come along with me? All right, intro to A Midsummer Night's Dream. First of all, we're going to define comedy versus tragedy in Shakespeare's time. Just like when you go to a movie today and you go to a comedy, you expect certain things. Well, in Shakespeare's time, plays were defined in very specific ways. So if you're going to see a tragedy, you know that it's going to begin very quietly but end horribly with lots of death. Comedies, on the other hand, begin with conflict and end peacefully, usually with some kind of celebration at the end. Community is the focus with a celebration of life. All right, A Midsummer Night's Dream can be very confusing because there's a large cast of characters and there are lots of overlapping plots going on. So, the exposition, the beginning, Act 1. This is where we set up the conflict. Like I mentioned, it is set in ancient Greece, so there's a lot of mythological references. Normally in class, when we do this, I have people kind of individually research the different mythological references, but we're doing the abbreviated version. So since we don't have as much time, some of those references may not be as familiar to you, but you can always look them up if you want to. All right, you do need to know that Theseus was a very important hero in Greek mythology. If you're familiar with the story of the Minotaur, he slayed the Minotaur. Hippolyta was a goddess warrior. And so the story goes that Theseus wanted Hippolyta's magic girdle, and he came and warred with her people, and he won, and he basically forced her to marry him. But in The Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare has turned this on its head a little bit, and they are happily in love and are on the eve of their wedding in the city of Athens. So Theseus is essentially ruler of Athens. There's a man named Aegeus, and he comes with his daughter Hermia. He's upset with her because Aegeus wants his daughter to marry a man named Demetrius, and she's in love with a man named Lysander. So they have brought Hermia and the men forth to Theseus for him to interpret the law. So it's almost like a courtroom scene. All right, so there are 4 overlapping plots. The first is the marriage of Theseus and Hippolyta, which is highlighted in Act 1 and Act 5. We have the mixed up love affairs between 2 sets of couples. We have Hermia, who I want you to imagine is very small and petite and brunette. This plays out later in an important way. Lysander, whom she's in love with. Helena, which is her childhood friend, who is Hermia's opposite physically. So she's tall and thin and willowy and blonde. And then Helena is in love with Demetrius, and Demetrius wants to marry Hermia. All right, that's the second plot. The third plot is in the fairy realm, in the woods, in the forest. We have King Oberon, king of the fairies, and Titania, who is queen of the fairies, and they're fighting. So what does that mean for the natural world? Since they rule over the natural world, if they're fighting, that is going to bring lots of problems, such as floods and storms and just general disarray. The fourth plot is the story of Pyramus and Thisbe. So you need to have some working knowledge of the story of Pyramus and Thisbe before you read Act 1, Scene 2. We have some men that are putting on a play within the play. They're putting on a play of Pyramus and Thisbe within the play of A Midsummer Night's Dream, which you are reading and watching. All right, so here is the setup of the relationships at the beginning. And sorry, my arrows aren't matching up very well. We have Theseus and Hippolyta, who are in love and getting ready to be married. Hermia and Lysander are in love. Demetrius wants to marry Hermia. And Helena wants to be with Demetrius. So things are not matched up perfectly. And then Oberon and Titania are fighting. Now, since they are otherworldly creatures and they have magical powers, they're kind of set up like the Greek gods and goddesses, where they're not so much married, but they're seen as a couple. But let's just say they have an open relationship. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the tradesmen, who are oftentimes referred to as the rude mechanicals. Rude meaning rough. So these would have been lower middle class workers, artisans, tradesmen. The background of this, that's important to know because otherwise you don't understand why they're putting on a play, is that these were kind of common workers, more like blue collar workers, but they could buy their way into gentleman's status. So in A Midsummer Night's Dream, these tradesmen, some of them, there's a tailor, there's a bellows mender, there's a weaver. They just kind of have more lower class jobs. They are hoping to be chosen to perform their play of Pyramus and Thisbe at Theseus and Hippolyta's wedding reception in the hopes of making some money and a name for themselves. All right, there's several references to different holidays: Midsummer's Eve, which we would probably call the summer solstice now, Valentine's Day, May Day. These are all holidays associated with coupling and love and infatuation. They're also associated with, down here, harvest, superstition, and magic, which is where we get the magical properties, especially once they go into the woods, because the forest and the woods is a magical place. Dreams and outdoor festivities. Literary devices. We would go into this more in depth if we were in class. There are many Greek and Roman allusions, references to Greek and Roman mythology. So ironically, it is set in ancient Greece, but Shakespeare uses the Roman god and goddess names. So if you're more familiar with the Greek counterparts, just realize they're essentially the same gods and goddesses, but the Romans gave them different names. There's lots of imagery. There's a lot of dramatic irony where we as the audience have information that the characters don't, which is what makes it funny. And of course, there's lots of puns. Some of them we get, some of them we don't, because, 500 years is a long time for, certain references to remain funny. Although some of them do. Some of them, you'll be surprised, are just as funny today as they were 500 years ago. The language, it's very lyric, song-like. It's written in a blank verse. Once again, we would go over this, more in depth in class, but it does have a rhythm to it. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. It's this alternating stressed and unstressed syllables. The couples often speak in rhyming couplets, and the rude mechanicals are in prose, which is kind of a nice break. It's a little easier to understand. Prose is just non-poetry, and so you're going to find that the nobility and the gods and goddesses and the fairies are going to speak in blank verse, this more refined poetry, and then the lower class workers are not going to be as refined and they'll just speak in prose. Themes include the complexities of love, dream and imagination, and also be on the lookout for opposition: city versus woods, waking versus sleeping, night versus day, sight and blindness, reality and illusion. All right, so one more note before we go. I mentioned Pyramus and Thisbe, and I'm trying to find this. Give me a moment. Oh, I don't have it pulled up anymore. So I will just tell you a little bit about Pyramus and Thisbe. This is a very old story written by, or put down, a lot of the storytelling um, with the ancient Greek texts were told orally. So there was a Roman man named Ovid who put a lot of these stories down into a book called the Metamorphoses. And that is plural for metamorphosis, which you know what a metamorphosis is. It's a change that happens. So all of the stories are meant to explain some type of change that occurs. And you will find a lot of parallels, I'll just tell you now, between Pyramus and Thisbe and Romeo and Juliet. So, which came first? Well, Pyramus and Thisbe is from ancient Greece. So, yes, Romeo and Juliet was not an original idea. It actually stemmed from Pyramus and Thisbe, and Shakespeare made it his own. So, read Pyramus and Thisbe. Your assignments for the week are posted. The first thing you should do after watching this is you should probably do your response to one of the videos for the independent project. And then you'll need to read Pyramus and Thisbe. You'll do a storyboard for that. If you just want to sketch it out and take a picture, that's fine. If you want to do it electronically, you can do it that way, whatever way you want to. You're just doing a visual summary with short captions. And then you will read Act 1. There's a study guide that accompanies that. And there's some vocabulary with that, which I have on Quizlet. And then sometime between Friday and Sunday, when you've completed all of that, you will take 2 short quizzes. So one is a comprehension quiz over Act 1, over basic comprehension based on the study guide, and then one is a short vocabulary quiz. So that is the week in a nutshell. I hope you enjoy A Midsummer Night's Dream. Make sure that you make note of any questions that you have, because it can get quite confusing with all the characters and all the plots that are overlapping. And I will see you later.